Have you ever wondered what your grandfather did during the war, or what kind of sacrifices he had to make? My grandpa Henry Hess was a Lancaster County farm boy who had recently left his farm to work at a local company. Shortly after his new job started, Uncle Sam called his name.
I was drafted November the 24th, 1941. I was 21 years old.
On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and declared war on the United States. Henry was part of the 18th Engineers and ended up in Whitehorse, Canada on April 7, 1942. He started working on the Alcan Highway, which stretched all the way to Fairbanks, Alaska. Henry made sure to stay in contact with my grandma by writing letters. They made up a plan so Henry could tell my grandma where he was. With every letter, he would change his middle initial, and by luck, the Army didn't notice. The 18th Engineers cut down trees, prepped land for roads, and laid pavement. They worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. During the winter, they slept in tents, which held 4 men each. They slept in sleeping bags in negative 74-degree weather. They would wear full gear to stay warm. Snow never melts in Alaska during the winter, it just continues to pile up. Equipment was always falling through ice and getting stuck in the snow. After eating chili every day, 3 times a day for a month, some of the engineers decided that they would start hunting and fishing. Once the Alcan Highway was finished, Henry drove a 10-wheeled Studebaker alone over a frozen lake. As he drove, he could hear the ice snapping and cracking for miles. Luckily, Henry made it across safely. For weeks, Henry helped get trucks that were stuck in the snow and ice to get out and get repaired. Henry was then on his way to invade Kishka Island, but his regiment was notified that there weren't any Japanese on the island, so they continued on. On their way to Attu Island, a Japanese submarine found them and began to chase them for several hours. They began to shoot torpedoes at Henry's boat, but luckily the boat was too high to be hit. Once they arrived at Attu Island, the Japanese were bombing the area, but due to the thick fog, the boat Henry was on was able to hide and stay untouched. They next arrived in Shima Island on Easter morning in 1943 to find an empty island. The weather was cold and horrible, and for a year and a half, Henry helped level the land and create a runway for the B-29s. Henry finally received his first furlough after being away from home for 3 years and 17 days. He was home for 21 days, and while he was home, he proposed to my grandma, Claire Campbell. After Henry's furlough ended, he was sent to Texas, and the 18th Engineers were broken up and sent different ways. Henry was sent to Fort Pearson, Florida, and later sent to Vero Beach, which was an experimental base on an island. The tents were right on the beach. While at Vero Beach, they experimented with different types of weapons, one being the land-going snake, which would be shot onto the land and explode under the barbed wire and allow invasion. Another was a duck, which was a vehicle that was able to go on land and water. Henry received his second furlough in May, and on May 8, 1945, the war was ended. 4 days later, on May 12, 1945, Henry and Claire were married.
The minister from our church was on vacation, and we had to get a minister from a local church. And when he arrived that day, he arrived in tails, and we were just getting married in my parents' home, and people were all sitting around in the living room. And my mother didn't know what to serve these people for the reception, so she happened to have an old rooster that was left over from when they moved off the farm. And so she cooked him up and made chicken salad and served them. We had chicken salad sandwiches for our reception.
Once the furlough came to an end, Henry and Claire returned to Florida together. Henry worked 8 to 5, 5 days a week. Henry was discharged on October 7, 1945, and came home to Pennsylvania.